So in this video, we're going to be focusing on day 90 of Through the Bible in 1 year. And we're going to be covering 1 Samuel 15 to 1 Samuel 17. And there's three key things that I've listed down today, which are really impactful, which is number one, the prophet Samuel is going to wind up killing someone, which is really vital. Number two, God is going to teach Samuel a really key lesson. And number three, the popular story of how David downs Goliath. So I'm really curious. Let me know in the comment section below. Which one of these three things do you think is the most significant and something you're looking forward to most? Is it number one, where the prophet Samuel is actually going to kill someone? Is it two, a key lesson that God's going to teach Samuel? Or number three, is it the popular story of David downing Goliath? Alright, so let's get into today's Bible study video and let's get started. Starting at verse 1, read, Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore, hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. So we literally start the Bible reading today with a bang, okay? And the first thing we see, which is really vital, is the Lord sends Saul on assignment. And the assignment we see here is to wipe out the Amalekites. Now, I'm not going to get into the inner specific details. The Lord's opened up here in the first three verses because we've got a separate video specifically just centered around God telling Saul to go and wipe out all of the Amalekites, men, women, children, infant, suckling, and all the animals. And I'm going to put it right up here in the card, so make sure you watch it after this video because I'm not going to be focusing on it in this video. So let's keep reading and see what happens. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to a city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, Go, depart you, get you down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For ye shewed kindness to all the children of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites, and Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah, thou comest to Shur, that over against Egypt. So what do we see here? We see that Saul, what does he do based on this? He basically numbers the people, he lays in wait, and ultimately he follows through with the attack on Amalek. And so far, this looks like a triumphant victory for King Saul, despite some of the things we've seen already previously with Saul and his whole reign as king being in jeopardy. Okay, so this automatically kind of seems and suggests to us like this was the Lord giving Saul an opportunity to kind of redeem himself for some of the previous mistakes he had actually made. So let's see what happens as the story unfolds after this battle with the Amalekites, where they're supposed to literally wipe out everything. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep and of the oxen, and of the fatlings and the lambs, and all good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything vile and refuse that they destroyed utterly. So what does it say Saul did? Okay, so they basically wiped out most of the Amalekites, but Saul decided to keep King Agag and the best of the spoil. So when you think about what God actually said to him, okay, God said to him, wipe out the Amalekites, utterly wipe them out. But he left, which is kind of significant. You can kind of class Agag as probably arguably the most important Amalekite there is. He's the king, okay? This would be the person you wipe out when you're in battle to sort of end the war, but he leaves him alive. And then it goes into a list of all of these different things that Saul left alive. He talked about sheep and fatlings and all those different kind of things. And what I was going to say is basically what the scripture ultimately goes on to say. It says he left the best, basically, of the spoil. And when you think about it from that regard, he basically didn't follow through with what God said, because not only did he leave the king alive, he also just left what was refuse, as the scripture says. Okay, so he left the crap, basically. He basically left what was useless, what was not beneficial, but he kept the best for himself. So what is arguably seen as a redemptive opportunity for King Saul has ultimately shown us again how King Saul isn't someone who's going to follow exactly what God's saying to a T. Now let's see what is going to happen as a result of Samuel delivering this message to Saul from the Lord, and how Saul has actually messed up the assignment that God actually has given. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, It repenteth me that I have set up Saul king, for he is turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. And when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place, and is gone about, and passed on, and gone down to Gilgal. So what does God say to Samuel? God says to Samuel, okay, Saul's reign is over. And the reason he gives for this is, he basically says, Saul will not follow me. The scripture says it in its own way. It says he's gone back from following me. So we're at one point, if you think back to some of the previous chapters we've covered in our Through the Bible study, where we talked about how Saul, okay, was actually doing a lot of key things right. He was actually being really obedient in a lot of things. But now it's got to the point where, whether it's the power that's got to his head or whatever it is, he's gone to a point where God said, you know what, I'm changing my mind with Saul. He's clearly not showing me that he's worthy of this opportunity. I've taken him from the low stature, not only in the whole of the tribes of Israel, but in his own tribe of Benjamin. And he's not following me, so we're going to get someone else. 13. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said unto him, Blessed thou of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. So what does Saul say? Saul isn't getting the message. He thinks leaving Agag alive, sparing Agag, and taking the best of the spoil means that he's actually followed through. Okay? So Saul says, I've completed the task. But we already know that God has already said no. Okay? Saul hasn't performed what I told him to do. And like we've seen time and time again with the prophet Samuel, what's he going to do? Most likely the right thing. And let's see what he says next. And Samuel said, What then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? So he basically says straight away, okay, you think you've completed the task, so why can I hear these animals? And he's doing this to pinpoint that these are the animals that you've just taken from your slaughter, from the spoil of the Amalekites. Okay? What does Saul say? He says, And Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. So notice the first thing he does. What's the first thing he does after Samuel calls him out? Okay? He basically blames the people. And you can see this kind of stuff traced all the way back to the Garden of Eden, okay? What was it when God questioned Adam and said, What have you done? Have you eaten from the tree? What was the first thing he said? He said it was the woman, okay, pushing blame away from himself, whom you gave me. So not only did he blame the woman, he went and turned around and blamed God, specifically himself. And he's basically saying the people brought back these things, and they're the ones that are making these offerings, etc. So what does Samuel say in response? Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said to me this night. And he said unto him, Say on. And Samuel said, When thou little in thine own sight, thou not the head of the tribes of Israel, and the Lord anointed thee king over Israel. So what does Samuel say to him? Samuel alludes to something I brought up earlier, okay? He says, when you were no one, basically, okay? When you were no one of importance, the Lord anointed you and promoted you and raised you up as the king. And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, Go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil and didst evil in the sight of the Lord. So Samuel considers this evil, okay? Where Saul has tried to say, I've completed the task, okay? Samuel is highlighting and identifying to us that this is considered evil in the sight of the Lord, okay? Why is it considered evil? This is what we're going to get into is one of my favorite verses in the scriptures, okay? One of my favorite texts in the scripture. And he's going to answer why this is considered evil. So let's keep going. What does it say? And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. So what does he do next? Okay, he blames the people again. First, he just said, yeah, it was the people that did it. They brought of these good things and all of that kind of stuff. Samuel's basically rebuking him through what God's saying, and then he blames the people again the second time. Oh, but they only brought these things so we can offer them to the Lord, basically. And this is the key verse here. The next couple of verses are one of my favorite pieces of text in the scriptures. And Samuel said, Hath the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey better than sacrifice, to hearken than the fat of rams. For rebellion, the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness, iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from kings. So, powerful text here. But the vital part is God saying to him, okay, obedience is better than sacrifice. Because some people try and turn around, like Saul did, and say, hold up, okay, I know you told me to go in and destroy everything and take nothing for myself, but we decided to take some of these things and offer them to God. And God says through Samuel that has the Lord great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord, okay? And he goes to say, basically, obedience is better than sacrifice. Saul tried to come from the standpoint that even though in this bad situation, I'm trying to do good. And God says to him through Samuel, no, okay? Obeying what I say, okay, is more important to me than you trying to make an offering to me, okay? Especially if the offering is a contravention, is contradictory to the words I've actually said to you, okay? So it's a key lesson that God is giving us here in this whole situation with Saul. He's teaching us, first and foremost, that you put God before everything, okay? Even the works and the activity you try to do for God, okay? If those things are counteracting what God's actually said to you, then you're in a big trouble. And this can be considered evil in the sight of the Lord, okay? And this is why it's vital, because some of you, okay, everyone's probably been in this position before. I've been in this position before. You may have been in this position before, where you're doing something for the Lord, even though the Lord's told you not to do in one way or another. And you're trying to say, well, I'm doing something good, okay? But it's not about what's good. It's not just about what's good. Before doing what's good, it's about obedience, okay? Because this is how people today get messed up in loads of different things. For example, you've got people out there that are preaching that aren't supposed to be preaching, okay? You've got people out there trying to go and evangelize that aren't supposed to be evangelized, and they're supposed to be doing something different for God's kingdom, okay? And they think they're doing something good, which they are doing something good. Evangelism is good, preaching is good, whatever it is, it's all good. But is that what God specifically told you to do? Okay? And this is the point that this scenario is highlighting to us, okay? Make sure before you're doing those good works that you're obedient to God, okay? And this also kind of links in with the letters that Jesus wrote to the churches in Revelation. One of the things he says to one of the churches is, you've forgotten your first love. And then he basically goes on to say, okay, remember the former things, okay? which ultimately is the relationship. Okay, obedience. Let's keep going. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. So what does Saul say here? He now gets to the point and says, you know what? He did this because he was fearful of the people. So after blaming the people 2 times, he's now confessed and said, you know what? I was a sinner. I did make a mistake, and it was because I feared the people. So maybe he's giving us the illusions, the information here that they were the ones that brought the stuff and said, no, let's keep the best of the stuff. And he didn't turn around and say what Samuel said, which is, no, we need to wipe this all out. He continued and said, okay, no, bring the best. And this is how he's in this situation. The problem with that is he is actually the king. Okay, he was King Saul. That means it's his responsibility. The onus is on him to make sure that this task here is completed. Let's keep going. Now therefore I pray thee, pardon my sin and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord. So he's trying to now say, look, and after blaming the people twice and now coming true and say, you know what, I sinned, etc. He's basically now trying to say, look, let's wipe this away. And this is the second key lesson in this whole text, which is really vital in my opinion, and why it's such a key example in the scriptures. Because firstly, it gives us the context that obedience to God is the first and foremost thing. The second thing is, what does it say next? And Samuel said unto Saul, I will not return with thee, for thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord hath rejected thee from being king over Israel. It says that, yes, okay, which something we highlighted earlier, Saul's reign is over. And this one decision, okay, you can look at some of the different examples we've seen in previous texts and add it all together. But the point I'm trying to make is, all it takes is one decision, okay, for you to lose something very, very precious. And it's not only something that isn't going to be precious to you, this is something that has ramifications potentially with your generations, okay? In the previous video, okay, I'll put a link up there in the cards, we read about one of Saul's sons, okay, Jonathan, and how Jonathan was doing, was producing great delivery in battle, okay? We read about his other sons and his daughters and his wife, but the point is, because Saul is now not going to be king, what does that mean? That means his son, okay, whichever son would have become king, isn't going to become king, most likely. That means his son, and then that son's son will never have the opportunity to become king, most likely, because he fumbled in this one particular situation. So I'm not saying this from a standpoint of, oh, you do this and oh, you do that, okay? Because we all make mistakes, okay? We all commit sins. The point I'm trying to highlight to you is for you to get understanding, is just to become conscious of these kind of things. So every time we make a wrong decision, it could have a huge, long-lasting ramification. I know it's hard for some of us to think like that all the time, but I just urge you to try and think about those kind of things a little bit more frequently and more often, because there are, while we're on this earth, ramifications, okay, in the flesh that can continue to befall us. And as Samuel turned about to go away, he laid hold upon the skirt of his mantle, and it rent. And Samuel said unto him, the Lord hath rent the kingdom of Israel from thee this day, and hath given it to a neighbor of thine, better than thou. So what does he say? He says, look, the kingdom is gone from you, okay, and will go to someone better. And also, 29, and also the strength of Israel will not lie, nor repent, for he is not a man that he should repent. Then he said, I have sinned. Honor me now, I pray thee, before the elders of my people and before Israel, and turn again with me, that I may worship the Lord thy God. So Saul has realized that, yes, okay, you know what, maybe my reign is over, but up until that point in time, okay, basically restore me is what he's saying. So he can still have some sort of face, so to speak, some sort of reputation still amongst his people until whatever time God sees fit to remove him from the kingdom. So Samuel turned again after Saul, and Samuel worshipped the Lord. So Samuel turned again after Saul, and Saul worshipped the Lord. So Saul actually, is restored. And what happens next? Let's keep going. It says, Then said Samuel, Bring ye hither to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites. And Agag said, Surely the bitterness... And Agag came unto him delicately, and Agag said, Surely the bitterness of death is past. So Agag comes along and he's trying to come delicately and he's trying to speak and say, you know what? Surely, that time of anger and vengeance has actually fast spent. But what does it say Samuel did? It says, And Samuel said, As thy sword hath made women childless, so shall thy mother be childless among women. And Samuel hewed Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house, the Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel came no more to see Saul until the day of his death. Nevertheless, Samuel mourned for Saul, and the Lord repented that he had made Saul king over Israel. So where Agag is coming softly and saying, surely that time is over, what does it say Samuel did? Samuel took matters into his own hands and basically chopped Agag into pieces. And this to me suggests that Samuel was going through this personally himself to ensure that the job got done, because this was a very important task that needs to be done accurately. And because Saul fumbled, he loses his reign as king, and Samuel takes matters into his own hands and kills Agag, even though this is something that should have been done in battle and not necessarily by the prophet. So already in today's video, we've already covered something key, which is what we just covered previously, which is the prophet Samuel himself killing King Agag. Now let's go on to the next chapter and continue our study, as we still have to cover God teaching Samuel a very key lesson and David downing Goliath. So 1 Samuel 16, let's see what it says. And the Lord said unto Samuel, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? And before we continue that with the rest of that piece of text, what is God saying to Samuel? He's saying, how long will you mourn? So this is giving us insights. We read from the previous piece of text how Samuel went away to his place in Ramah, and Saul went to Gibeon, where he lives, and it says Samuel visited Saul no more until the day of his death, But we're getting insights here, which is telling us that Samuel is actually mourning for Saul. And what does God say next? He says, Fill thine horn with oil and go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. So first God says to Samuel, how long will you mourn? Then he says, fill your horn, go and anoint the new king. Now this shouldn't be a huge surprise to you if you've been following along with us. We've done a couple of videos of Jesse, and I'll post one of them up in the cards here. But in the book of Ruth, which is the book we've done before Samuel, we got a brief family tree genealogy going back from Judah and Tamar's son all the way up to Jesse and his son. Now it hasn't mentioned who his son is yet. That's what the story is going to continue to unfold. But if you've been following along with us from Ruth, you know that this son of Jesse is going to be David. And even for those of you who know some of the stories about the Bible, maybe you know about David slaying Goliath. That might be one of the stories you know. But let's keep going anyway to see how the story unfolds. And Samuel said, How can I go? If Saul hear, he will kill me. And the Lord said, Take an heifer with thee, and say I am come to sacrifice to the Lord. So God basically says, Samuel's saying he can't go and do this because Saul's going to find out and kill him. So God basically says, take an heifer and say you're going to sacrifice. So God gives him a reason to be going to this particular location. 3. And call Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will shew thee what thou shalt do. And thou shalt anoint unto me whom I name unto thee. And Samuel did that which the Lord spake, as usual, which is usual for Samuel, to continue to be obedient to the Lord, and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, Comest thou peaceably? And he said peaceably, I am come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Sanctify yourselves, and come with me to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons, and called them to the sacrifice. And it came to pass, when they were come, that he looked on Eliab, and said, Surely the Lord is anointed before him. So he sees one of Jesse's sons, okay, Eliab, and he says, surely this is the king's choice. So according to Samuel, Eliab is the one that's going to be king. Well, what does God say? God says, But the Lord said unto Samuel, Look not on his countenance, or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For not as man seeth, for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So we get a clear piece of evidence here from God, which is really vital. Okay, Samuel was looking at Eliab, okay, and looking at his outward appearance. God says, I don't look on the outward appearance, I look on the inward appearance. And why is that vital? Well, firstly, it's vital because it indicates to God that he's not just going to pick someone who's pretending or seems to be the rightful choice. God is going to pick someone, okay, who can see inward. He can look at your heart and say, okay, you know what? This person will truly serve me. And that is the difference between men and God, which God highlights there. And this is a really key lesson as well. There's so many key lessons in this scenario, okay? But one key lesson I'll give to you, which I've taken from this piece of text from years ago and discussed with other people. I know I've talked about this with my brothers and other people as well, but God gives you a nugget there, okay? He says that men look on the outward appearance, okay? It's not to say that you should do things to other people, but the key lesson is, okay, understand that's how people think, okay? So I'll give you an example. If I came on the video and my hair was all over the place, my beard was all over the place, I was wearing just these raggedy old clothes and all that kind of stuff, you might still appreciate the message because the message is the message, okay, generally speaking, but it might be hard for you to get past my outward appearance, okay? If I was doing this video and I was cursing all over the place and saying a lot of just derogatory terms and phrases and statements, the message you might appreciate, but all of the different things I'm saying might be an issue, okay? So it's something that you factor in when you're doing this kind of stuff. Not that that's what God's looking for, okay? God ultimately can look at my heart and see why I'm doing certain things. There's certain things I do outwardly because I know men look on the outward, okay? But ultimately, you have to focus ultimately on the inward, okay? So if God says, okay, you know what? I want you to wear something specific for this video you're doing, even if I think, you know what, hold on, people might look at me wearing something and say, oh, why is he wearing that? Or that looks tatty, or whatever it is. God is more important. It's the same thing God was saying in the previous chapter to Saul, okay? So where you can still be obedient to God inwardly, and there's still provision for you to do things outwardly as well, you can do that. But if these things start clashing, okay, as we saw in the previous text, obedience to God is more important than sacrifice, okay? Oh God, you know what? I'm dressing this way, I'm doing these certain things for people so they can hear your message. But God didn't necessarily tell you to do that if that's going to counteract, okay, what he said to do. So that's just a key vital lesson that you can take from. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Then Jesse made Shammah to pass by. And he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Again, Jesse made 7 of his sons to pass before Samuel. And Samuel said unto Jesse, the Lord hath not chosen these. So we see 3 named sons. Then we see from 4 all the way down to 7. The names aren't specifically given here, okay? If you know the other names of Jesse's sons, leave them in the comment section below, okay? But they're not given as names here. But all 7 of his sons are brought before Samuel. And God says every single time, 7 times, no, okay? These are not the sons of Jesse that I want to anoint. And Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all children? And he said, there remaineth yet the youngest, and behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. And he sent and brought him in. Now he ruddy withal, of a beautiful countenance, and goodly to look to. And the Lord said, Arise, anoint him for this heat. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. And Saul's servant said unto him, Behold, now an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. So what happens here? Okay, he goes through the 7 sons, and Samuel says, Is this all of your children? And he says, No, there's one more. Okay. And they bring him, and what does it say? It says, Samuel anointed him king in the midst of his brethren. Okay? So all of his brothers and his dad and Samuel, and that's all that's listed as being there, okay, see David anointed king. And even when you think about this, if you go back to the previous video, okay, I'll put it up here, where Samuel anointed Saul, okay, you can see it's a very specific differences. Another thing I want to highlight is, for those of you number enthusiasts out there in the scriptures, okay, what is the number 8 generally in the Bible? It's generally the number of new beginnings. So obviously David's about to be the new king, and this is the new beginning, okay, the new beginning of the reign, etc. So the Spirit, it says, went into David, okay, the Spirit of the Lord started leading David, and the Spirit of the Lord left Saul, okay, and it talks about how an evil spirit started to trouble him. 15. And Saul's servant said unto him, Behold, now an evil spirit from God troubleth thee. Let our Lord now command thy servants before thee to seek out a man, a cunning player on an harp. And it shall come to pass, when the evil spirit from God is upon thee, that he shall play with his hand, and thou shalt be well. And notice what God's going to do here. This is a prime example of where God can take someone, okay, and instantly upgrade them, okay. But the key thing is, you have to be faithful in the position you're actually in, okay? Because Saul is the king, David is from the line of Judah, okay? He lives in Bethlehem, okay? And David isn't anyone special, just like Saul wasn't anyone special outwardly. But you're going to see how God is going to pull David from where he is and literally put him right in front of the king and position him and prepare him to get ready to become the king of Israel, okay? So why is this vital? Because you might be in a position now that isn't the most exciting. You might be in a position which you're looking at and you're saying, why has God put me here, okay? You might be in a position where you're saying, I don't want to be in this position no more. This isn't the position I want to be in, or this isn't the position that best serves my gifts and my calling and my talents, okay? But just notice, it only takes one action. The Spirit went from Saul, basically, to David, and now an evil spirit is troubling King Saul, and his servants are saying, let's go and seek out a man that can basically help you when the Spirit comes to trouble you. And who's going to come and be the person to basically help Saul in this situation, to minister to Saul in this situation? Then answered one of the servants and said, Behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, cunning in playing, and a mighty valiant man, and a man of war, and prudent in matters, and a comely person, and the Lord with him. Wherefore Saul sent messengers unto Jesse, and said, Send me David thy son, which with the sheep. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shoco, which to Judah, and pitched between Shoco and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. So what we see here is, there's a battle in a place called the valley of Elah, okay? And what's basically happening here is Saul's gathered his people, and Saul has gone to fight. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and a valley between them. So we basically see something along the lines of this, okay? And the Philistines on one side, and Israel's on the other side. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height 6 cubits and a span, and an helmet of brass upon his head, and he armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat 5,000 shekels of brass. And greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders, and the staff of his spear like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set battle in array? Not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul. Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. So this is what we see about Goliath, okay? We see his height, we see his armory, basically. And it also talks about how there's someone who held his shield that actually went before him, okay? So this is the champion, the leading fighter out of the Philistines that we hear about. Now, you can kind of gauge from the first thing we hear about him is that he was 6 cubits high. Now, there's loads of different, he was himself a giant, okay, as you can see from the description. But we also will find out later on that he's also a son of a giant, okay? And this is the guy who's basically challenging them, saying, look, bring out a man to fight with me. If you be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we might fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Goliath has made this big challenge. You bring anyone to come and fight with me, and if he kills anyone from Israel, the guy, then you'll continue to serve. If they kill him, then they'll become their servants. And the scripture talks about how Saul and everyone else was afraid. Everyone's afraid of this huge giant that's got all this armory and has got a shield bearer that goes before him as well. Now, David, the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, who's named Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men, an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle, Eliab, okay? So we're seeing now about, let's put it here, Jesse and his sons. Now we did this in the previous chapter, okay? But it talks about Jesse's 3 sons, 3 eldest that went, okay? And it talks about how one of them, which was Eliab, which we knew already was the firstborn, okay? Then it says, and the next unto him, Abinadab, that was the name we got previously as well. This was the second. And the third, Shammah, okay? So it's the same names, the same 3 names we got from the previous text. Now it's confirming to us, okay, that these 3 were the 3 eldest, okay? And in 4 to 7, we didn't get names. And then obviously number 8 is actually David, okay? And it confirms here that there's 8 sons. The 7 that passed before Samuel first, and then David that came last, which would obviously result in 8. And David the youngest, okay? David, which we kind of knew already, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So the 3 men are part of the army. David isn't, okay? David's the youngest, and as we saw when it first introduced David, he was keeping his father's sheep, okay? And it says David would obviously help Saul, as Saul requested from him in the previous text, but then he'd obviously go back and tend to his father's sheep. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul one day, and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. So Goliath is the head honcho for the Philistines. He's going back and forth every day. Come on, bring someone out to challenge me. While this is actually going on, okay, mountain on one side, valley of Elah in the middle, okay, and Israel on the other side, they're battling, okay. Maybe one day Israel's winning, the next day the Philistines are winning, etc., going back and forth. 40 days pass. Jesse sends his son David with loads of refreshments, and he said, go and take it to the captain of 1,000 and see how your brothers are basically doing. For Israel, 21, and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. 22. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same word. What we identified here was him and the giant Goliath and his armory. And one of the things it said at the end was, he'd always say, look, he'd make the same proposition. One of you and him fight, and whoever wins will be each other's servant. Now, this particular time he's saying this, okay, David is around to hear it, and he hears it. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up, and it shall be, the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, so shall it be done to the man that killeth him. So he hears this whole scenario, and he basically says, look, whoever kills Goliath, what's going to happen? And they basically run through the whole scenario and say, you know what, whoever kills this man, Saul is going to promote, he's going to give him one of his own daughters to marry, okay, and ultimately he'll become the king's son. 28. And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. So why does Eliab act this way? We don't know, okay, but it says for some reason Eliab is angry at David, okay? And he basically goes on to say, look, ultimately, you only came here to see the battle. This is quite interesting for a number of reasons, because remember, Eliab, Abinadab, Shammah, and the other 4 brothers all saw the prophet Samuel anoint David, okay? So why is he acting like this? Is it because he's jealous? We don't know, okay? At this point in time, from what we've read, we aren't giving any answer. 29, and David said, what have I now done? Not a cause. And the cause was obviously Jesse, his dad, had sent him with the goods, the refreshments, the rations, to basically go and actually deliver to the captain. So let's keep going. 30, and he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. So he continues asking, what's going to happen to the person that kills Goliath? 31, and when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, thou art not able to go against the Philistine to fight with him, for thou art a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, go, and the Lord be with thee. So what does we see here? Okay, we've got the big bad giant Goliath on one side, and we have David on this side, which seems to be the only man, okay, or youth, okay, as Saul said, which is willing to fight, okay. So he's categorized as a youth by people, okay. And what does he say? He says, this is just an uncircumcised Philistine, just as the Lord delivered the lion and the bear out of my hand, he's gonna deliver the Goliath out of my hand too. And so armed David with his armor, and he put on an helmet of brass on his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail, and David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. So notice this, we've got Goliath on one side, we've got David the youth on the other, and Saul tries to give him armor, a coat, and a sword, and David says no, okay, I can't take this stuff because it's not proved. He hasn't proved it, okay. But what does David say in response also? He says, and he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had even in the scrip, and his sling in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. So what does he take? He says he takes his sling, 5 smooth stones, and his staff. And he goes to fight. So imagine, we've got this Philistine champion who's a giant with all of this armor, okay, who's propositioning every day, it seems, Israel to come and fight. And the only person that wants to come and fight is little old David, which is categorized as a youth. And the armor that's given to him, he rejects and says no. He takes a sling, he picks up 5 stones, and he takes his staff. Now, obviously, Goliath is one man. Why did he take 5 stones? If you want to know why, okay, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So when we produce our video answering this question, why he picked up 5 stones, you'll know exactly why. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. 43. And the Philistine said unto David, I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the hosts of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. So the big thing he's taking with him is God. And this is a clear, concise example of the big lesson we realized in the previous text, okay? Okay? God looks on the inward. Man looks on the outward. So by outward appearance, Goliath seems like the guy that wins this hands down. But with God, he can deliver you from anything. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle of the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So he's basically highlighting what I just laid out for you. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took thence a stone and slang and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him. But no sword in the hand of David. Obviously it talks about how David left the sword with Saul. What does he do? Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. So what happens? He hits him with a stone in his forehead, and he falls face flat onto the ground. Okay, he's out of it. He's gone. David runs along, takes Goliath's sword. Okay. Now he goes, takes his armor, and chops off his head. And the Philistines' army are looking at this, and they see this. What do? They run away. They're scared because they've just seen their biggest, baddest soldier get wiped out. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way of Sheraim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tent. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son this youth? And Abner said, Thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Inquire, thou whose son, the stripling. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son thou, young man? And David answered, I, the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. So just like that, okay, we finish day 90, 1 Samuel 15 to 17, because we've finally seen David down Goliath. And if you like these kind of studies, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And what I'm going to recommend is you watch this video right here, because it's the logical next step for you to watch based on what we've just covered today. So make sure you watch that video and don't forget to subscribe by hovering over the round icon and clicking subscribe. Thanks and take care.